Welcome to Dream in Colors 72207.com, and it's Worktable Wednesday. So let's get started on what we're going to be doing tonight. I gave you a little hint earlier that we're going to be working with the Artistically Inked stamp set and the artistic dies. So looking to see how much of a delay there is so I can get this up and moving. So this is a stamp set that's in our annual catalog, and if you're familiar with our annual catalog, it's actually the cover of our annual catalog. It is a beautiful stamp set. The designer series paper that accompanies this set is exquisite, and in fact has been sold out for some time. Now let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, it does zoom. Look at that. I'll be darned. Let's see if it gets what we want. Okay, so here's the die, the artistic die that goes with this Artistically Inked stamp set. And I've played a little bit before tonight getting ready for this. And so I really want to highlight the designer series paper that comes as a part of this suite. The name of this designer series paper is Expressions in Ink Designer Series Paper. It is item number 155464, and the colors that are included, and there's 7 colors. It includes the Evening Evergreen, Just Jade, Magenta Madness, Mint Macaron, Pale Papaya, Pear Pizzazz, Polished Pink, and Shaded Spruce. So this is an interesting collection of colors to work with. So let's dig in and look first at the inks that we're going to have. So we have Evening Evergreen, which is kind of dark, and then so we basically have 4 greens. So we have Evening Evergreen, Shaded Spruce, Just Jade, and Mint Macaron. Pale Papaya over here representing the yellows and oranges, and then not 1 but 2 different pinks. We have Magenta Madness and Polished Pink. So you can see that these colors together, it's a beautiful palette. So let's get started. I'm going to flip through the designer series paper first and let you see that before we get started on this process. Okay. So let me set these inks over to the side for the time being. And let's flip through. Now I've cut into some of this paper already, and I can tell you already, I sew as well as paper craft, and I have a tendency to hoard paper, not hoard paper, but hoard fabric. And I sometimes have it and worry because I don't want to cut into it, because then the potential for whatever I can do with it is gone. So I love this paper, and I've already got ideas. Excuse me, I have to sneeze. Pardon me. I already have some ideas for what to do with it in terms of creating some scrapbook pages. So you can see here, this all looks like it's been inked using the alcohol inks. And then this page looks like they have come back with some watercolor and have pulled the pigment off the page using some water droplets. This has a gold highlight, so it's a specialty paper. So each of these, we have 2 of each of these pages. So you have this gold and white stripe, and this reminds me of the gold and white stripes we used to have for one of our bags. We had some little gift bags. And then here's the Pale Papaya with the same watery look. This piece is divine. It's got well, it basically probably has all of the colors in it in one piece. So this is not metallic, but then you flip over and the greens are there with the gold metallic. This looks like some of that Floetrol acrylic pouring paint that's happening online. And then this, to me, this page looks a little bit like some of our peach paper that's out. because of the pale papaya, but it's got this beautiful gold accent here, and then just a plain, maybe more of a yellow green than perhaps this bluish green. And obviously it has no gold on it. This would make a beautiful background for just about anything. And here's that stripe again. Now we have this piece that has the flowers on it, so you see the floral images that match the stamped images. So you see, let me get where I can pull this up. So you have this image and this image. You have a large rose and a small rose and some smaller fill-ins. And then you also have this gold detail for the leaves and the centers of the flowers. And I point that out because you're going to see that motif again in the dies. And you'll see that we have this giant leaf, spray of leaves here with eight petals on it. You also have a floral die here. Outlines of the three flowers, the three larger flowers, the three small flowers that stamp together, and then 2 leaves that you can die cut as well. I love this piece. I cannot wait to use this on cards or scrapbook pages. And then of course the way this is, I have visions of a scrapbook page, and I could do a double page layout and have this run together like this. I could do a single page layout with it going vertically. I think the possibilities are endless. I really am looking forward to playing with this. I really am not, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but I am definitely looking forward to it. And I'm excited to see this. This also has potential for being a good card background. You could cut your background of your card here. You could make a 6x6 with this very easily. You could make a 5x7. You could make some larger cards. And I come back to a similar floral that is not, what am I trying to say? It does not have the gold detailing on it, but it has this piece. And I think we may have seen the companion to this earlier. Then here's the pink that we saw the back of this, but here's the page that is just gorgeous. We'll be using this on one of our cards tonight. And then this green and the 2 or 3 shades of green on this one, which backs up to the plain green wash. So all in all, these are gorgeous papers. They have really outdone themselves on this set of papers. You know, every year I think their papers aren't going to get any prettier, and every year they come back and surprise me and make prettier papers. The other piece that we're going to be using tonight is going to be the Gold Shimmer Vellum. This is in the August-December mini catalog that will be going live in August on the 3rd. This is Gold Shimmer Vellum, and so you can see there is a shimmer to that page. I think you can see the shimmer. Let me turn this other light on. See if that helps any at all. So there is a shimmer on that page, and I believe you can see that. So we're going to be using this with our stamp and emboss machine tonight later on. So this gets you started on the contents of what we're going to be using. Here are the papers. Again, I wanted to go through the colors that are in this DSP. We see the Magenta Madness, the Polished Pink, Evening Evergreen, Shaded Spruce. Looks like I put these other 2 down over here. Just Jade, Mint Macaron, and Pale Papaya. Now, if you're interested at all, these packets, these are Avery ticket holders that I've ordered online, and they will hold they will easily hold 1 package of cardstock of the 24 pages of 24 sheets of cardstock, of the colored cardstock. And I love these. These are great because they stand up, and I sort my cardstock by alphabetical order. And so I know that this goes in the M's, and I can read this label in my bookshelf. So I also keep it where the sun does not shine to possibly bleach out any of the paper. When I went to my next set this year, when I ordered new tickets, I ended up getting these envelopes instead. These are actually envelopes that are used in the classroom to hold students' work. You oftentimes can put the student's name in this little envelope right here. And then this is just a Ziploc that holds all sorts of papers in here. So this is great for doing packets for kids for classwork. But this also works really well for holding cardstock. And as a matter of fact, I have my basic white and my basic white thick in these containers because they do come in larger quantities for the cardstock. So I do keep that. And then I actually have created it's almost like a go bag. I have 4 envelopes that have 2 sheets of every color in it, so I can grab them if I'm going to go to work on a workshop somewhere, or if I'm going to go to a retreat, and that way I have all the colors available without carrying everything I own. So without further ado, let's get started. I would like to know if any of you have some storage ideas that you think would be valuable and to share with the rest of the group. And if so, please type them in the comments. So let's get started. I don't want to be here all night tonight, but very few places I'd rather be than crafting with you. So when I opened up this set, I started playing with it, and the first thing I did was I stamped it in balmy blue with balmy blue on balmy blue paper just to get an idea. So let me show you something about these stamps. In case you don't know, these are called distinctive stamps. Trying to see if they're marked anymore. They don't mark those in the labels anymore. But how you know is that the way that the stamp is created in the imaging, you can see that there's more dots on this section than there are on this section. And so you're going to get more coverage of ink in the darker area than you do in the lighter area. And so that gives you a really nice dimensional look when you stamp your images. So I wanted to point that out, and that's one of the reasons that using these stamps with our water-based inks, you can really achieve some interesting looks that look almost like some of the alcohol inks that you're seeing people work with online. Okay, so I just wanted to show that to you one more time. So let's set that over here. So the first thing we're going to do is I have a piece of just jade for my card base. Now remember, we cut our card bases at the standard 8.5 by 11. Cut it in half either as a hot dog or as a taco. Is it a taco and a hot dog? So I have this one cut at 5.5 inches this way, scored at 4 1/4, folded in the half. And I've taken the bone folder and creased it to create a nice sharp crease on this side. Now the next thing I want to do is take this piece of designer series paper, but before I do anything with this, I would like to cut a piece of white, and actually I'm not using white, I'm using this gold. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adhere this under my designer series paper, but I'm only going to adhere it back here on this edge, and you're going to see in a minute why I'm only adhering it back there. So using some of our Stamp and Seal, let's see. Now, so I have the adhesive on one edge, and I'm going to put it away. I'm going to adhere it to the card away from the open edge, and you see I have an open edge over here. So we're going to do that. Now, prior to turning the camera on tonight, I actually trimmed this paper, and then I came back and I cut in halfway up the page. So it's 5 1/4, so this is 2 5/8 up from the bottom. I just went in a little ways, maybe 1.5 inches. I just kind of eyeballed it, maybe 1 1/4 to 1.5 inches. And so what we're going to do is we're going to very easily, we're going to put a little glue right here on the corner, or a little, I should say, stamp and seal. We're going to put a little stamp and seal up here on this corner. Then we're going to take these corners and just peel them back. And we're going to do this, and we're going to curl that back. And what that does is that gives us the impression, so you've got this sort of behind the camera, behind the scenes. And so what I like is that the gold peeks out. I really like the gold stripes here. So then we can mat this on our card front, and we have what looks like a rather intricate card front, and you can see from what I did, it wasn't that difficult. You know, that's the trick with most of the stuff that most of the cards that we make. So many of them look very complex, but honestly, they're not. So all we'll do is we'll line this up. Let's see. Got glue. There we go. We're going to line this up so that it's all nice and even. And then I've got adhesive on my fingers. You can see I also have ink on my fingers from playing earlier. So the other thing I'm going to do, rather than having this adhered completely flat here, I'm going to take a couple of these mini dimensionals just on the corners and just barely, just to give it a little bit of depth. I'm just going to barely put those on there. Well, there it is. And that way it stays up off the page and doesn't go anywhere. I like that. The ability to, let me get my take a pick tool, get that back off. There we go. So that gives us the card base. Now let's do our sentiment. Now remember, I talked earlier a couple of weeks ago about always having some white on hand, and that's something I like to do, is to keep white on hand. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stamp thanks, and then we are going to use this everyday label punch. I'm going to go ahead and punch this out so I can, well, actually no, I'll go ahead and stamp first. So let me grab my acrylic block. And remember, we put the image on at an angle, especially if it's text, and then we will stamp it so we don't try to artificially line up the edge of the block with the words with the paper. So since this is just jade, I think I'm going to pick one of the, I think I'm going to use just jade for the ink. Let's see. There we go. Had a little trouble getting that open. Okay. Now let's just stamp this right here. So that gives us a nice crisp image, and we're going to let that dry for just a second while I close up my ink, because you know, if you leave the ink out, I'm going to have a finger or an elbow or a foot or something in it if we're not careful. So this just barely fits. So by stamping this on the paper, you can then come back in and line up your punch. It's very simply, just like that. Then we'll put this here. We can put this right here. Now we will use, I think we'll go ahead and use the full-size dimensionals. I had them out before we got started. There they are. Again, you know, if somebody comes in and eats my dimensionals, you can tell because the sheet of dimensionals is almost gone again. I really do think people come in the night and eat my dimensionals. I think they're a little chewy, but hey, what do I know? Okay, so I have been in and out lately, and I apologize for missing. Last week, I was actually out to dinner with a friend. Mike and I went out with another couple to dinner and had a lovely evening in a restaurant in Lone Oak, of all places. It was at the Grumpy Rabbit. And so Mike keeps calling it the Grumpy Bunny, and I keep reminding him that it's not the Grumpy Bunny, it's the Grumpy Rabbit. But that's what he has on his mind right now, is the Grumpy Bunny. So we'll do that just like that. How's that look? Now, in a minute, we're going to come back and put some more embellishments. We'll come do the embellishments at the very end. Now, remember, the other thing I talk about is always having some cardstock cut either to the quarter size, which I like to work off of, or even a little bit smaller. And so I'm going to go ahead and trim this up. So I'm going to trim 1/4 from both axes, from both the long and the width, length and the width, trimming 1/4 of an inch. Nothing fancy, to be perfectly honest with you. But then I'm going to take a piece, I'm going to come in and get this rose, which is this image right here, and I'm going to stamp it in Magenta Madness on the inside of the card. So let's do that. You know, it's always nice to have a little something something on the inside of the card. And so this way, we have this down here. Now that's kind of bright, so let's flip that over. We might just flip it over and see what a second generation image would look like. And you all remember what that means. It means we've stamped off the ink, so we're using a lighter image. So let's see which one of these we like better. Do we like the dark one or the lighter one? I think I'm going to go with neither, because I think that needs to be polished pink and not Magenta Madness. That's one thing about having these colors so close to each other and having them both in the same set, that it's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, at times to really match up your colors. But let's try this again. Next time we're going to use polished pink. We're going to just trim this up. And like I said, you know, when you're sitting when you have nothing else to do, take some of your basic white cardstock, cut it into quarters, then you've got it for working like this, and it's so much easier to manipulate than if you were to have an entire sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock out. You could just cut it in half and work it that way if you wanted, but this way also makes it pretty easy to fit in the stamp and emboss machine. So let's clean that. Oops, didn't mean to stamp there. Okay, that looks good. You can tell I haven't been stamping for a little bit of time because my chamois is a little dry. Okay, so let's try this again. Now, since we're going to do the second generation, let's just go ahead and do this. So these take a little bit of time. I think my thoughts are to go with the initial stamped image, because I'm not sure how this is going to fade and bleed into the paper. Any thoughts on that? I'm not sure if anybody has any feedback. Let's see. I think the primary image is actually going to be the better of the two colors. So let's take our Stampin' Seal and just put it on this. And the beauty of doing something like this is that you can stamp a lot of things on your card interior. You can stamp some salutations, you can put some decorations on here, but then you don't have to stick it down until you get the card finished. So there is a pretty simple, like I said, we'll come back in a minute and do our embellishments when we get finished. It won't take much. And in fact, we may die cut some embellishments before it's all said and done. You know, stranger things have happened. So there's one card. So we'll set that aside. Now the next card I want to make also is going to be using the Designer Series paper as a starting point, because it is using this beautiful, beautiful, let me say it again, beautiful pink paper. So again, I think that we can look at either Magenta Madness or the polished pink. I think what I might do is use the polished pink, and we're going to try something, because something that I've noticed that I don't always like, I'm trying to find if I have my pink brush. It's brown, that's yellow, that's green. I'll just use this one. What color is this? Okay, I'm going to use this one anyway. It's a blank one. And so I'm going to use the magenta. I like the Magenta Madness. This has a little bit more of a yellow tint to it. So, no, we ought to use the polished pink. Nope, we're going to use Magenta Madness just because I like it better. Okay, so what we're going to do though is to soften this a little bit, because this against the white is rather stark. And so why don't we take this, and this is a little trick that I've learned that you can do with these blending brushes. So if you don't have one of these yet, Stampin' Up! Has these in the catalog. There are 3 to a set. You can buy as few, or I mean, you can buy 3, you can buy multiple sets. Most people I know generally go with about 6, because you have your primary colors and your secondary colors, and then you can clean it after a fashion between colors so that you don't get any bleeding. So for instance, I have one that's for blues, one that's greens, yellows and oranges, browns, pinks and reds, and then a blank one. And I think I probably will end up, actually I have one that has brown. Yeah, I have browns, and then I may have one that has grays and blacks when it's all said and done. But if it reminds me a little bit of back in the day when we used to do a lot of distressing on our paper. So the way you use the blending brush is you take it and you tap it in your ink pad 2 or 3 times, and then I always tap it off here because it picks up a lot of ink. And then all you're doing is just lightly brushing the edge of the paper. All you're doing is putting a little bit of color on the edge of the paper. So you see how it's providing a little bit of a shadow. And I think it just helps finish off the paper just a little bit better than just sitting there. And I just think it adds a nice touch to the page. And because it's a blending brush, you can always come back in and blend back up into the paper itself a little bit further. And I'll show you that since we've got that one spot of white. And so we can get this. Now, so generally when you use a blending brush, you work it in a circle like this. So if you do that, start making your circle over here off your paper and then slide it in, and so you get your paper that way. You don't end up with awkward brush strokes on your paper. But then it allows you, and you can see what I'm doing here, is very gradually adding color to this white section so that it's a little more of a subtle transition and not just a bunch of ink along the edge. So when you're blending paper, when you're blending ink on your paper, you can do as little or as much as you want. This is rather a subtle, you can see there's just a little bit here, but you could take this on cardstock and blend the whole all the way up. You can blend your colors. You can do a lot of different things with it. So let's close that before I again get my hand in it. So now we have this, and we have a card front. So let's figure out what we're going to put on here. So in our set, we have this beautiful, we have happy birthday, best wishes, hello. So I would like to take the happy birthday and stamp that across in white, or on white, in this Magenta Madness to match what we're using. So I'm going to grab this other piece that we played with earlier, and I'm going to take this and clean it real quickly. I think this is a great set because it has both a thank you and a hello, best wishes, and happy birthday. I mean, and who doesn't need birthday cards? You know, I am getting to that age where I'm needing sympathy cards almost as frequently as I need birthday cards, which is pretty sad, but that's just a fact of life. So let's do this, and we will simply stamp this on the white, and we'll hope it's sort of straight. One can hope. And then we will trim this to fit the text. So there we have happy birthday. Now, the other thing I would like to do, and we're going to trim this by hand, is using this Magenta Madness. I do want to do one of these flowers, because I want to be able to ground the sentiment with one of these flowers. So we're going to ink it up just like we did before. Come over here and we're going to stamp it right here. Now we're going to let that dry for a second. While that's drying, I'm going to put this little bit of paper together on the card base. So let's build this just a little bit at a time. Now, obviously, if you're using white for your card bases, I recommend that you go with the thick whisper white, or excuse me, the thick basic white. It just has more body to it, and it does hold up a lot better in the, it just is a more substantial card. If you're going to add a lot of layers, and so for instance, it's the same weight, the basic white is the same weight as this cardstock, but what I've done is I've added a layer of basic white here, and I've added a layer of designer series paper here. So this one, under normal circumstances, I would have put this on thick basic white, but right now I've got it just on this piece. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a piece of this gold stripe, because I just love this gold stripe so very much. You know, give me some stripes. Of course, you know I love polka dots too. So I'm going to make that, for the time being, I'm going to start with it at 1 inch. I don't know if I'm going to need it to be 1 inch, but then we're going to take this happy birthday and I'm just going to line it up. Now, I know that I probably didn't print it or stamp it exactly perfectly. So what I'm doing is I'm going to use where the letters are peeking through under the guide, and I'm going to use that to line up the sentiment. And so I know that one piece is cut. Put this over to the side. So then that makes this, when I make a 90-degree cut on this, it makes this even. And then theoretically, it'll be easier. I'll be able to take this and line that up on those, on this right here. And can't get that off of there. And then make this down here. So now we have our sentiment. And we're going to stack that on top of there, probably along here, somewhere like that, and put that there. But before we do that, we're going to actually cut this flower with the dies using the Stampin' Cut Emboss machine. So let's get that out. Let's put this right here. And you remember how this works. We have the base plate, we have the adapter for the thin dies, because this is considered a thinner die. So I will put my cardstock here. I'll come back and find the die, which, like I said, on this tray of the sheet of dies, it's this one right here. and we'll put it on here until it lines up. And y'all, these are really pretty easy to line up. Sometimes you got to hold your mouth just right when you're lining up dies. Sometimes they go together like peas and carrots. Sorry, I think that's something that somebody used to say. Now, what I do like to do is, because I've already stamped this, is that I want to make sure this doesn't move on me. So I'm going to put a small piece of washi tape on the die itself and on the outside of the image. And I say that, so don't put it on the inside of the image, because if you do get too much pressure on it, sometimes that washi tape will maintain its adhesion and you'll end up getting stuck to the image itself, and you don't necessarily want that. So let's see what this looks like. So we've got this. So we have that rose, or that, I don't even know what flower that is. Is that a peony? I'm not sure. I'm not a horticulturist. So anybody that knows what that flower is, if they would pipe up and tell me, that would be excellent news. I'm going to put this down right here. Now, as we talked earlier, this is kind of a abrupt on the edge, so we're going to take this blending brush that has a little bit of ink left in it, and because it still has some ink in it, we're just going to come along here and soften that edge just a little bit. I think that just adds a little bit of depth to this piece, and it, like I said, it softens it just a little bit so that it's not quite so stark on that edge. So let's come back and look at this. So this is this is an inch. I think I'd like to make this 3/4 of an inch, and that's very easy to do because obviously we have 1/4 inch marks shown all the way on this cutting board, on this cutting paper cutter. So I'm going to line this up on the 3/4 inch mark. Drop my finger out of there because the cutting cutting guard is wide enough that it will keep you from touching that. It looks like it's about time for me to clean out the tray on my trimmer because I'm getting some lint when I cut. So let me just, you know, if this happens to you, all you need to do is just come along with a pair of your paper snips and just clean up that edge, and it looks as good as new. And then what we're going to do is adhere this to this page, to this. Now we're going to trim this at about here, and then I think I'm going to trim that much off, and then I'm going to fishtail this end. All I'm going to do is just put a snip up in the center of the strip and then cut in from the corners to match it. So that's how I have a fishtail like that. So okay, we're going to put this a little bit lower on the card, not exactly in the middle. We're going to put that down, come back with the happy birthday, and we're going to adhere it with dimensionals. These are the mini dimensionals, so you can see they're smaller than the regular dimensionals, so they're great for some of these narrow pieces that we have. And let's just, before I get too worked up, let's grab this thing and just use take your pick tool, and that's the way to get these dimensional backs off, especially on these minis. Okay, well, there we go. All right, so now we have happy birthday on there, and we're going to pop that up like that. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to use our larger dimensionals, and we're going to stack those up, and we're going to put our flower up on dimensional as well so that it stands up on top of everything. Let's see, I'm going to do that way so that maybe Okay, so when I finish this card, I'm going to show you a couple more things that I've made while I was getting ready for this class. So then you have that. And like I said, that is the second card. So we have these 2 cards. You have a birthday card and a thank you card. Now let's get out the other projects that I made. And well, you know what, before we do that, I think we will grab those. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to I'm going to run this through the Stamp and Emboss machine on this gold shimmery vellum. I'm trying to, it's slick, and I'm trying to make it so that I am somewhat conscious of how much paper I'm using. Although it's paper, use it. If you don't use it, it sits in your closet, and then it's discontinued and it's retired. So if you got it, use it. So again, just like we did earlier, we're going to make the stack. Now, because this is not a stamped image, I'm not going to worry with taping this down with a piece of washi tape, because it's not a stamped image. I'm just cutting the paper very simply. So run that through your Stamp and Emboss machine. And then this die actually is small enough. We could have probably used the mini Stamp and Emboss machine if we had so chosen to do that. Now, so what we're going to do, now this is where this gets fun, because this particular die makes a mess because of all the little indentations from the leaves. But it makes for a beautiful accessory. So, you know, you take the good with the bad. So I'm going to pop those out. And I know that you can get the attachment for your take your pick tool with the brush, but I prefer just doing this. I think sometimes when I think I'm a little bit too rambunctious when I use the brush, and maybe not quite gentle enough with the paper. I know, hard to believe. Bull China shop, me, I know. So let's finish this. But I love this shimmery paper because it'll go so well with the accents on this Artistically Inked Designer Series paper. And I like this die because it does give you end up with 8 leaves. So you can either do a nice long swag of leaves, or you can break it apart. And you'll see in a minute, I've done it a couple of different ways. And this just adheres with either the Stampin' Seal or the green Tombow glue or glue dots or tear tape. You can use any of those to adhere this. So let's take this last card, the second card I should say, and figure out how we're going to do this. So I would like for this swag of leaves, I think I'm going to have one come down off the bottom, but because I have so many, I think I'm going to actually trim this so that these come right here along the bottom. Then I'm going to fix this stem because it's now just sort of hanging out there. And of course, if you kept this as a single piece, you wouldn't be fixing anything because there would be nothing to fix. So then I want to take this and basically put it right here so that you've got that texture. So let's grab a couple of glue dots. Now these are glue dots not on the roll. These are glue dots that I have recycled from, well, that is underneath something. It's caught under some adhesive under there. These are glue dots from Paper Pumpkin kits that I have recycled. but only because I just feel like I can use them and not let them go to waste. So we've got that piece. Now this piece, we'll need to put a glue dot on right here. And let's get one more, maybe up here. Okay. So I'm curious what everybody's been doing. I know that we've been traveling some, but we're back. Yay, we're back home for a little while. I'm excited because I'm ready to get some pool time. And I know that with the heat this weekend, it's supposed to be record high or getting near record highs. Getting good and hot, let's put it that way, to have pool time. Okay, so now you have that. So let's look at our embellishments and see what we can add. Let's see. You know, I keep my embellishments in two little containers over here. So I have any number of little goodies. So these are the in color jewels, and so why don't we start with those, because these are the right colors, because these are the colors that are in this set. So this is actually polished pink jewel, but you know what? I think that we may pick up the pale papaya and use that with this gold. I think that is going to complement that very well. So we'll put a couple of little rhinestones up in here just to give it a little bit of glitter. So there's that card. And now with this green, since we're using just jade here, and that's actually going to be fresh freesia, soft succulent, evening evergreen, pale papaya, and polished pink. I think what I'm going to use on this, I think I'm going to pick up the dark green and put a large one, and then one on either side. Now this, one thing I like about doing this is that even though you're putting rhinestones on here, it doesn't look frou-frou-ish, and so this could actually be used for, you know, either gender as a recipient. So you don't necessarily have to have this going to a man or a woman. I like the fact that this could be received by either one. So we have two cards. We've seen those two. Now, before we started tonight, I also ordered this last time the Ombre, what are they called? The Ombre Gift Bags. Now, that is a set of gift bags. There's 20 gift bags. It's item number 155, 479. There are 5 different colors. There's 4 bags of each color, and they're basically, it's your current in colors. So it's evening evergreen, fresh freesia, pale papaya, polished pink, and soft succulent. So I chose the soft succulent, and you'll see here, this is the die that comes from the Artistic Dies, and I just cut it out of the basic white. And you can see I have the pale papaya flower that I've stamped, and then I've put those up on dimensionals. And this would be great to hold gift cards, thank you notes. These bags are food safe, so I would suggest if you put food in it, you might want to wrap it in plastic so that you don't get any grease spots, but you still could do that. And then here's one that I used the polished pink, and I took the leaves that we just used in the gold, and I cut them out of white, and I did a tone on tone down here, put thanks in the corner, cut those leaves apart and stacked them under the flower here. And then the last one, I stamped the flower on the bag, stamped hello, a little crooked, but it's there. And then I left the flowers, I left the leaves in green. I left the leaves in gold, the glimmer gold vellum. But I also stamped those roses using this shaded evening evergreen. But what I want you to see is, again, and this is how I showed you earlier, this is when you stamp the evening evergreen on white and you get this very stark white line around the edge of the image, and it looks very abrupt. So what I did is, again, I took my blending brush and I used the evening evergreen and I blended on the edges and a little bit in the center just to soften that. And so it doesn't look like it's quite so stark as this. So here are, like I said, 3 easy gift packagings, all done with the ombre kits, the ombre gift bags, and 2 super simple cards that we put together in little, not very much time at all. So these are, again, we're using the artistic dies and the Artistically Inked stamp set, and I hope you enjoy that. If you like this video, please like the video on Facebook. I'm going to be posting this to YouTube later, and if so, please give me a thumbs up there.